Good morning, everyone. I'm just checking that my microphone is on for first-time viewers here on Solid Ground. The regulars will know and tell you that I am a great one for forgetting to turn my microphone on. But good morning and welcome. Welcome to Solid Ground. It's actually the last one of the year, stress of the year. We are back in 2025, but I think this is our 29th episode this year. And already my boss and colleague, Bob McCosry, just to prove that he's up, he's about to tell me I should take a holiday, and I think that's probably the best advice that Bob has given me. As you can see, you can comment live into the show. So good morning, Amanda. Lovely to have you back from the Wairarapa. I hope the rain is welcome, though. We just had a whole pile here in Auckland yesterday, and I have to say, as a keen gardener, pleased to see that. So guys, as you can see, with Solid Ground, you can jump onto the Family First Facebook page or their YouTube channel, and if you comment, just like Ian has done here, you can get your message direct to me in the studio, or of course, we also have the lovely Philippa there from Whitianga. Lovely to have you along. Welcome, welcome, welcome. And as you can see, again, if you're a first-time viewer, know that if you are jumping online and flicking through a message, I'll get them in studio and do my best to share them. Look, there is so much to cover on this, the last show for 2024. I'm excited, not because it's the last show, but it's Christmas. It's a wonderful time of year. For Rachel and I, we've actually got most of her kids, in fact, all of her kids, coming back, although I've just taken one to the airport. That was an exceptionally early start, but one of the 5 is actually going to be away at Christmas. But all the others are coming back, which is quite exciting, although I will also say I'm becoming very familiar with the drive. To Gillian, good morning, lovely to have you with me. Oh, as I may have said, I think was it last week or the week before, amazing part of the country. To Alex, lovely to have you along. Look, guys, it's wonderful to have you as part of Solid Ground. It's just been a great journey. It's a great journey. Oh, we can't have a show without Chris. Good morning. And I'm really pleased so that Chris is mentioning here that the Hawke's Bay drought is over. Yeah, well, thank God for that. You'll have to let me know how long it's been. I know there's been a drought. I don't know, though, whether it's been years or months. Isn't that terrible ignorance on my part? To Erin, good morning. Lovely to have you along. So, guys, quite a few things to touch on today. So I'm gonna try and keep within the half hour that I try to set myself, but also just to jump through topics. I'm actually going to move to one that is very much time dependent, and it's this one here. You need to, if you have time in the next 24 hours, to be honest, you've got 24 hours to write to your Member of Parliament to ask them to not pass another Easter trading law. So this is a members' bill, which is somewhat unexpectedly being read tomorrow morning in Parliament. That's quite unusual. It better be clear, there's no skullduggery happening in any way, shape or form. It's just unusual to be on a Wednesday morning. But one of the bills, it's a members' bill, so it's been put forward by an ACT MP, basically says that there's no longer any trading or alcohol restrictions on Good Friday or Easter Sunday. So the major issue, I think, is really, it'll be couched. I've talked to some MPs, and by the way, you'll find that most of the MPs on the left, so if you're in an electorate with a Labour or Green MP, more than likely they will oppose this bill. But it's likely that, obviously, I'd say most, if not all, the ACT MPs and a good number of the national MPs will be looking to vote for this. So this is why you need to jump on an email your local MP and say, hey, look, don't vote for this. These are one of the very few days left where people can actually be with their families. It's often when there's lots of Easter camps. A couple of the MPs I've been talking to say, well, Simon, it's all about choice. We're giving people choices. What they conveniently forget is for them to have a choice in their privileged position, a whole lot of others will be forced to work, and they'll say, no, we'll make sure the law says that they don't have to. I mean, honestly, you have to be completely naive to think that. Those working in hospitality or retail, I mean, many, if not all, are not, very awkward sentence, sorry, but are not going to tell their bosses, oh no, I can't work today, I don't want to. There's often, if not always, consequences. So there isn't choice for a lot of workers. And obviously these are special days. Some will say, well, they're Christian days, we're a diverse country. Yeah, you can make that argument, but if there are no special days, there can never be special days for anyone. So look, tell them not to vote for it. I'm told a number of Christian MPs are going to vote for this bill. I think that's, it's their conscience, but it's the wrong call. So yeah, just an encouragement to everyone. Find out who your local MP is. And particularly I'd say if they're on the government side, I expect that most Labour, Green and Te Pāti Māori will oppose the bill. So obviously if they're your MP, message them anyway. But if you're in an area with a national MP, an ACT MP, send them an email, and you've got 24 hours because they'll start reading it tomorrow morning. So, but just quickly, good morning to Joy. Lovely to see you and family the other day down there in Wellington, and to Bella. Good morning. Lovely to have you on the show. So yeah, email. There's your task for today. I know you're all busy. There's a ton of things happening, but look, jump on and flick an email. It's the first reading. We don't want it to go through. Other things to quickly let you know about, particularly from the Family First side, then I'll touch on some of the news. We've been very busy actually providing information to the Ministry of Health around puberty blockers. Long and short, we've got some pretty good legal advice actually that says the Ministry of Health is most likely acting illegally by continuing to prescribe puberty blockers. You can find out more details, obviously, of jumping on the Family First webpage or jump onto the social media channels. But you'll recall about a month ago, the Ministry of Health put out some information or a review of data that basically said there's no evidence that puberty blockers are doing any good for young people. In fact, there's some, I'm trying to find the right word, some initial data that indicates they are probably harmful, likely not reversible, and so forth. In other words, a drug is being prescribed, what they call off-label, because puberty blockers aren't specifically for blocking puberty. They're actually hormonal drugs for other uses, which these cranks, or what sometimes you call doctors, are using against or on children. Off-label, so they're using a hormone drug to stop puberty. And the data from the own New Zealand Ministry of Health is saying, actually, we don't know if they're safe. They're probably not. But the ministry has not made any changes. In other words, these quacks, these doctors, and only a few of them, by the way, so it's not all doctors, a few of them are continuing to prescribe these very dangerous drugs to young people and children. And it's, well, to be honest, it's a shocker. So we got a legal opinion here at Family First, looking through a variety of New Zealand's laws, and long and short, we think the ministry is acting illegally. So we've sent them a very long letter explaining everything and making sure they know, and then demanding they actually take action. And as well related to this, the Ministry of Health is doing, it's asking for submission. So after it released the data, they decided they should actually just consult the public, which I have to be honest with you guys, I found a little bit odd. If we're a scientific and data-driven society, then you look at the data and you make decisions. But the Ministry of Health, in its infinite wisdom, decided to go out for public consultation. So you can be part of that. In fact, Family First wants you to be part of that. It's very easy. You can jump on. I'm just going to put this comment out because Linda nails it. You can be part of the submission process. My suspicion is the Ministry of Health wants all the trans activists to come online and say how wonderful these drugs are and it doesn't do any harm to children. It's a beautiful and wonderful thing. And then use that to override the scientific data. So we need to match that, if you will. We actually have right and science on our side. We have actually most of the world on our side. If you didn't know, the UK's just banned puberty blockers completely, not dithering like New Zealand. Anyway, if you go onto the Family First webpage or onto our social media, you will see a way to make a submission. You've got till the 20th of January. So unlike Easter trading, you've got a little bit more time up your sleeve. But short and simple, you can just point out to the Ministry of Health as a parent, as a grandparent, or just a concerned citizen that actually doing this to children with no scientific evidence is wrong. Yeah. And Amanda's just, sorry, my eyes darted to the left or the right. my right, probably your left. Yeah, but they don't. Amanda's got a good point here about listening to the testimonials. Like we had Chloe Cole over for the Family First Forum this year. You'll find the trans activists and these medical doctors don't want to listen to the detransitioners. In fact, they do all they can to destroy their reputation. And the last really quick thing, because Bob's just put it, I think it was this morning, but won't surprise you with sort of the agenda that is in play, but the Ministry of Health, New Zealand's taxpayer, is funding millions and millions of dollars to do these procedures. And look, I'm not going to go to them in detail. There's so much more to discuss today without getting caught too much on this. But long and short, first and foremost, enormous amounts of your money are going into unnecessary procedures. Translated surgery is not a medical necessity. It's something that someone wants, a bit like cosmetic surgery, if not accurately a cosmetic surgery, when actually there's a whole lot of other pressing medical needs. The second is, and again, I'm just hesitating to make sure I don't go too graphic, but at day's end, a trans surgery, whether it's a woman supposedly becoming a man or vice versa, you are removing good, healthy, functioning body parts and then replacing them with fake ones. And if you just step back for a moment, I'm ethically trained, but many of you will be too, or just actually a good dose of common sense. We don't tend to cut off good, healthy parts of our body and then make fake ones. It's all a little bit odd. Anyway, good morning to Rosie. Yes, two things. Yes, I've always liked that first do no harm. That remains one of the key principles. And as people know, I love my Latin. So it's primum non nocere. First of all, primum, do no harm, non nocere. But we don't really have the Hippocratic Oath anymore, which is actually a bit sad, but it's also a bit predictable. I've forgotten, it's not really an oath now, but it's sort of a pledge. I think you can still elect to do the Hippocratic Oath, but it's not... Yeah, not critical. It was not critical to becoming a doctor anymore, which is a pity. Philippa nails it. It is important to do these submissions. So whether you do an email to your MP in the next 24 hours about Easter trading, telling them actually it doesn't give choice to a lot of workers. It's an important family day. Oh, I'll point out to them too, those MPs, if they're taking away Easter Sunday and Good Friday, is Christmas Day and Anzac Day next, and just watch them squirm, because there's no good logic or reason. Hey, last thing too, because I better do this a couple of times. Money, we need your money. No, we want your money. We don't need it, but we want your money. Family First is doing its annual Christmas fundraiser. If you feel a sense of generosity, if you have a few dollars left after the massive Christmas spend, by oath, I've been up in the supermarket of late. Things are not cheap. But anyway, if you've got some money left, you'd like to support the work that Bob, myself, and the team at Family First do, jump online and feel free to donate. They're running a thing at the moment. You'll remember my wonderful Solid Ground mug. Some of you have them already. One person I won't name received the mug broken, but be assured we've got a second one in the mail. But Bob is part of this little deal, if you like. If you are happy to donate to Family First, then you can select and we'll send a mug. And why I say select, we've got Solid Ground mugs, we've got Straight Talk mugs, we've got Family First mugs. There's a whole panoply of mugs. There probably is an M word for a plural of mugs, but there's piles of them. So yeah, if you'd like to be part of helping and supporting Family First, be part of our Christmas fundraiser. So look, a couple of other topics, granted from overseas, but these have a real impact here in New Zealand. The first is this lady, Moira Deeming. She's a Victoria, as in Australia, MP, and she was called by her party leader, who's the grumpy guy in the red tie, John Pasuto. Long and short, she attended a Stand Up for Women's event in Victoria about a year or so ago, or maybe it was 2 years ago. She attended a women's rally. She believes that biological women are women and men are men. Controversial for the woke, but for most of us, and for pretty much since the dawn of time, has been well understood. Anyway, she attended this rally, and her party leader not only forced her out of her political party, and get this, she's on the centre-right, she's in the equivalent of the National Party, but like a lot of centre-right parties, they've lost their conservative or moral framework. He effectively kicked her out of what's called the Liberal Party, and called her a Nazi. In fact, called her all sorts of terrible things for daring to attend a woman's rally. Just an absolute shocker. Anyway, the great news, because this is actually a good news story. The good news is Moira took John here to court for defamation, because what he said repeatedly really was, well, defaming her, impugning her. And as Philip has noticed, she's been vindicated because the court, a federal court, so a pretty senior court, said, yep, on 5 counts, this party leader, John Pasuto? Probably saying it wrong, doesn't really matter. He's now having to pay her at least $300,000 in damages. Plus, I was talking to someone yesterday who will actually give you some more details. I'll tell you how to hear that podcast. Plus costs, which could well be in the millions. So there's some chance that not only will John be bankrupted, which actually might be a just outcome for the abuse which he's hurled upon Moira, but also he may well lose his leadership. There's already a bit of a rebellion brewing. So the good news, Moira's been vindicated. It's okay to speak up for women. And look, and I doubt there's many in this space listening, but even if you're one of these people who believes that men can become women, you should still believe in the right to free speech. In other words, she's allowed to have her opinion. But you notice the dynamic, same here in New Zealand. Happy when Posey Parker came around, occurred last, a couple of months ago actually, when there was a conference called Inflection Point in Wellington. Trans activists and their woke allies turn up to basically abusively stop, to stop conversations. It's crazy. And yep, Philippa nails it. It's actually what Moira said, and we're going to get her on my podcast, on the Family Matters podcast early next year. As Moira herself said, we're not going to stop fighting. There are more of them. So that's really, really good news. In weird, strange Australian news, and as I say, I've got a podcast to let you know about afterwards. It's just dropped, very new, more details. But this is the opposite. This is not a victory. This is another supposedly centre-right politician. As I say, another centre-right, and it seems to be happening across the board, New Zealand, Australia, and across the globe, that the centre-right's losing its conservative values. Anyway, this guy here, Crucifulli, I think, David Crucifulli, you'd think I'd know. Anyway, he's the leader, the premier in the Queensland State Parliament. Long and short, he has gagged or stopped members of Parliament talking about abortion. They're not allowed to talk about it. So it's unbelievable at a number of levels. Fascinating that there's almost no coverage about it. If this was a premier or a prime minister gagging any other topic, you imagine standing up and saying, we're not talking about climate change, we're not talking about the treaty, all hell would break loose. But because it's about abortion and the media is basically supportive of it, there's no comment. Now, granted, this is in Australia, but what a dangerous precedent this is. I mean, I can tell you as a former member of Parliament, unheard of in a democratic legislature to shut down conversation. Just an absolute shocker. Anyway, if you want to learn more, I actually sat down yesterday with Lyle Shelton. Some of you will know him. He's a politician or a political figure rather, in Australia. He's part of the Family First political party. So different to our, if you will, bipartisan advocacy educative group here in New Zealand. Family First is a political party in Australia, and Lyle's the head of that. But I sat down with him, and he talks me, and of course if you tune in, if you look up Family Matters online or jump onto our YouTube page, Facebook page, you'll find it. I sat down with him and he gives us all the details about the Moira Deeming case and all the details about what David Crucifulli is doing in Queensland around that, a gag. So look, Philippa, you're on fire today. It is an attack on free speech. And as I say, I mean, obviously I think discussing abortion is perfectly fine. I don't think there's a problem at all. But, you know, even for those who are happy with that, who've got no problem with abortion, for example, should be aghast that actually you can't have a conversation. But yeah, this is my latest podcast, The Family Matters, so check it out. Look, staying overseas because I can. I don't know if you followed this case, and I'm not going to go too much in detail. This is in America. This is a guy called Daniel Penny. Long and short, he was on a subway train in New York, and a homeless but drug-addled man, and I apologize, I've forgotten his name, I think it's something Neely, came onto the train screaming and yelling, threatening to kill everybody. And Mr. Penny here restrained him. Unfortunately, in the process of doing so, Mr. Neely eventually died. And I say that with a slight nuance because the man didn't die while Mr. Neely restrained him. In fact, it was only afterwards, once the police and ambulance crew were there, that the man, again, sadly passed away. But his court case became a bit of an issue, and they've turned it into a race issue. And that's probably one of the main reasons I want to put this forward, because this is New Zealand's media, News Talk ZB here, just absolutely appalling headline. Ultimately, it's sad that someone has died, but we can't escape the fact that Mr. Penny here, a former Marine, restrained someone who was threatening to kill people. Of course, had he stayed there and the now deceased Mr. Neely had harmed people, he would have also been pilloried. But what's happened in America through the woke, the progressives, the Black Lives Matter movement have turned this into a race issue, that a white man who's on screen killed this black man in the subway, which, is a true statement, except there's no context. But this is how appalling New Zealand's mainstream media is. The headline is, "Man acquitted after killing homeless man in a moment of white vigilantism." I mean, absolutely, I'm trying to find a word that is appropriate to use at 8:20 on a Tuesday morning. It is absolutely appalling and gutter journalism. And actually, I've got a Substack coming out tomorrow. It's going to touch on this and a few other examples. Our mainstream media just seem determined to destroy themselves. They seem determined to destroy themselves. And it's one of the reasons we run things like Solid Ground and Straight Talk, and Bob does his McBlog. I'm just putting this comment here because it's a bit more content. But this is why media are destroying themselves. They just cannot seem to tell the truth or to put the context. And most people can see through that. So I just thought it was an absolute shocker. And as Simply Green noted in that last comment, he was alive. But yeah, as I say, just do the thought experiment. Had this gentleman who's on screen just sat there, if, bit of stress, we don't know, the man was, as I said, on drugs, could be deluded, doesn't mean he was going to do anything, but had he, and Mr. Penny done nothing, then he'd have been pilloried for that. But then on the flip side of what's happening in America, as I flip sides as well, you might remember, was it 2 weeks ago, a chief executive of a healthcare company, I think the largest, was shot dead, was assassinated by someone. But just what shows the sickness within sort of the woke mindset, the assassins become a celebrity by a small but, as it calls here, a dark fandom. There have been those from the likes of AOC, so she's an American senator who won't outright condemn the assassination, through to the likes of Antifa, far left, progressive activists who are celebrating the man's death on the basis that, well, he was a wealthy businessman and he was not helping the poor, so it was okay to kill him. Look, we've seen that before in history. It's called zealotry, it's called revolutionaries, exceptionally dangerous. The revolutionaries, like these Muppets, if I can use that word, which I just did, they're celebrating someone else's death, and they seem to forget that the first set of revolutionaries get killed by the second. So it's just messy and dangerous and just wrong, and needs to be called out. So yeah, strange things happening in America. But turning back towards New Zealand, as I can find it, I just thought I'd put this. Let's jump to this one. As you might know, surrogacy is actually an issue before our Parliament. Kudos actually to the New Zealand Herald for putting this out, and apologies if I mentioned it last week, I can't remember. But long and short, a man went and paid enormous amounts of money to someone in Thailand to buy their child and bring it back to New Zealand. And unbelievably, the New Zealand court has allowed this to happen. In other words, through the back door, it's allowing commercial surrogacy. Now, we see a lot of problems with surrogacy because ultimately you are divorcing the child from its parent or parents. And as I pointed out before, it's amazing in this country, particularly with all the cultural talk about the importance of genealogy or whakapapa and connection and blood connections and all this stuff, that people just, surrogacy is fine. Madness. But even if you are someone who's okay with surrogacy, if you're okay with it, you generally won't be okay with commercial surrogacy, because effectively you're buying a child. And that's what this man has done. He's gone over to Thailand and bought a child, paid a lot of money. As I say, bought a child like you buy a pack of chips, and New Zealand's family courts allowed it. So you'll hear more from us in the new year, because as I say, Parliament is looking at a surrogacy bill. It's wanting to make life easier, not for the children, but for those who want to buy children, like this guy here. So it's a bit of a shocker. And continuing on the shocker, is this little story. You know I'm hot on the foreign affairs question, but I just want to tear my hair out with the lack of knowledge from the New Zealand police. I'm sure, well, actually I am sure, because some of my connections in the intelligence community are sort of going WTF. 33 police officers, some sworn, some not, went on a personal trip to China. It was organised effectively by a Chinese tour company. They were hosted and greeted by Chinese officials. So these are New Zealand police officers and staff. They chose to do it as a personal trip. Now, they're welcome to do that. People are perfectly free to travel to any country they want. It's a little bit suspicious, though, don't you think, that 33 of them all decided to take leave at the same time to toddle over to China and to meet a lot of communist officials. And they chose to do it personally, as the police keep trying to tell us, because, of course, there's no transparency. If this was an official trip, we'd need to know itineraries, we'd need to know costs. It's been a great way of hiding it. So, long and short, our police are being targeted by the Chinese Communist Party. It's something called the United Front Working Party. It's a very dedicated ministry. Think of a spy ministry on steroids. It's probably hard for most Kiwis to fathom. So these police officers and staff have gone over, and it's part of an influence campaign. Now, like so many of them, hard to prove. There's no absolute smoking gun. But if you start putting everything together, like someone wrote on a social media, well, you know, what's wrong with it? We should have these official visits. And you go, well, it wasn't official. It was a personal trip. 33 people, as I think Louise has got it here. It's just ridiculous. And these are our security officials who are going on a, it's just mind-boggling, and it just totally inappropriate. And you can imagine, and Philip is now you are on fire, Philip. It does smell rotten. Look, I can tell you as a former chair of foreign affairs, I'm appalled that this has happened. My friend Professor Anne-Marie Brady, she's an expert in Chinese communist influence campaigns, is going, oh my God. Even Andrew Little, former Minister of Intelligence and Defence, is saying this all has the hallmarks of a Chinese influence operation. So it's just appalling. It really is. Okay, I said, where am I? Sorry, I have so many little screens here. I'm just trying to work out where we are. Oh, yes. Well, that's it, actually. You know what? I'm not going to go into this last topic because it'll take me far too long. And it's Christmas. So there's my gift to you. I'm going to start winding up. What I'm going to do is just let you know about a few little shows and other work that's happening on. Obviously, these shows are winding down for the year. Actually, I'm going to put this one up. This is about China. Alex nails it. The people going, I suspect, were not naive. Or at least most of them are not naive. Some will have been. It's the police commanders which are trying to ignore this at the moment. Oh, well, it's just a personal trip. That level of naivety is appalling. So I agree with you. So look, a couple of things to keep in mind, because not only do we have Solid Ground, Bob, is very prolific. He does his Substack, so that's an online, like op-eds or writing. So you just go to substack.com. If you look up Bob's name or Mick blog, you'll get his recent one. So he's been writing about this transgender procedures. I write as well, something called On Point. Yes, you can see I'm fired up about China. This was a discussion from last week that I wrote about around how basically there's a charm offensive by the Chinese government on at the moment. And, well, how a number of both current and former New Zealand MPs, media and business people are basically peddling CCP or Chinese Communist Party line. So I just try to expose a bit of that. I have another Substack coming out tomorrow that's focusing on a number of really, and I'm sorry to keep using this word, but appalling reporting here in New Zealand, including another example where a New Zealand academic has withdrawn from a lecture because he was going to quote a British historian. And because we're meant to be, I suppose, treaty-led, you can't have discussions about the treaty if it involves the British. I mean, it's just bizarre. Absolutely bizarre. If you're interested, I've also, as you know, I'm on Reality Check. I do a show there. One of my last interviews was with this guy, Dr. Peter Boghossian. He's a great free speech advocate. He and I sit down and talk about, well, okay, free speech is good, but why? Why is it good? And then we talk a lot about truth, actually. How do you know what is true? And I mean, most of you guys will know we live in a world where people say, well, it's my experience, it's my view, I want this, I believe that. I mean, even jumping back to the trans issue. How do you know what is true and right and proper? Well, he's a philosopher, much better than me, philosopher as well, but, he's got a doctorate. He's been a professor, very smart cookie. Actually, he was the one, along with someone called James Lindsay, who wrote the bogus academic papers and got them submitted into all these gender study journals, and he exposed them. Peter here and James exposed these journals for really not being academic, but just, well, rubbish. So he's quite amusing. But yeah, we sit down and talk about, well, how do you discern between your view and my view? How do we know what's right? So that was a really good discussion. I was going to play my little usual advertisements of all the Family First shows. Actually, I won't do that this morning, not because they're bad shows, they're amazing shows, but we're pretty much done for the year. So if you've been following Straight Talk on a Monday night, obviously the likes of Political Playback, that's on a Thursday. We've had Pulse Point, that's a weekly news wrap-up show. They're all coming to a close as we head towards Christmas. And, well, as I said at the start, this is the last Solid Ground for this year. I'm excited to be back next year. So guys, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you join me. As I say, last little encouragement, if you have time, do think about doing a quick submission. Well, not a submission, write to your MP. Doesn't have to be long. Just say, don't vote for this bill. It's happening on this Wednesday morning, so let them know. We've got these puberty blockers. The Ministry of Health wants people to do submissions. As you say, if you don't get the Family First email, jump on to our Facebook page or jump on to our website. We'll give you the details there. You've got to the 20th. So no shortage of things to do amongst all the wonderful things at Christmas. So look, from my family to yours, I hope you have a wonderful, blessed, holy and special Christmas with your family. As I say, all of Rachel's kids are coming back, bar one who's just left this morning. So we're excited about that. For me personally, it's actually my first Christmas without my father, and actually for Rachel, the first Christmas without her mum. So while a joyful time, it's going to be a little bit sad as well. But from Rachel and I, and if I can on behalf of the Family First team here behind me at Solid Ground, have a wonderful Christmas to our Jewish community. Hag Hanukkah Sameach. Have a wonderful Hanukkah. And to everyone, a very happy new year and a blessed, holy, happy and safe summer. See you in 2025, guys.